My wife's affair with her boss was bad enough, but I didn't suspect's husband, who I thought was my friend, was secretly siphoning off $250, $0 of our joint inheritance. Now our marriage, house, and future are all in legal chaos over hidden debts. And betrayal, I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here, writing about how my wife, Lisa, turned out to be a complete liar and cheat. It all started with little signs, forgetting dates, acting distracted, and a sudden interest in her phone that I couldn't quite explain. But what really hit me like a punch to the gut was when I found out she'd been sleeping with her boss. Yeah, the woman she used to talk about like she was her best friend, and I genuinely thought was a decent person. Turns out, was just another piece of the puzzle in a bigger mess I never saw coming. Lisa and I had been together for almost 10 years. We met in college, got married right after graduation, and for a while everything felt normal. She was the bubbly, ambitious type, worked her way up at a marketing firm, always dressed sharp, always seemed to have her act together. I was proud of her, proud of us. We bought a house, started a little savings, and I thought we had a future to look forward to. But just as I was starting to notice her pulling away, I stumbled onto something that changed everything. It was a Tuesday night, and I was cleaning up after dinner when I noticed her phone lying face down on the table. Normally, she kept it close, but that night, she seemed unusually anxious. I figured she was just tired, but then I saw the notifications. A string of texts from mostly flirtatious, some explicit, and the last one, "Can't wait to see you tonight, I need you so badly." My stomach dropped. I didn't need to read the whole conversation to know what was going on. It was clear Lisa was having an affair. I sat there, stunned. My mind raced. How long had this been going on? Was I blind? I remembered all the little things, the late nights, the excuses about work trips, the secretive behavior. I felt betrayed in ways I couldn't even put into words. My first instinct was to confront her right. But I needed to gather my thoughts. I wanted to catch her in the act to see if she'd deny it or admit to everything. But I knew one thing, this wasn't just about the affair. It was about trust, betrayal, and the lies she'd told me for months. The next day I started digging. I checked her emails, her social media, even her bank accounts, and what I found was worse than I expected. Not only was she cheating, but she was also involved in something I never saw coming, something that would turn our entire world upside down. Husband Mike was secretly siphoning off a huge chunk of our inheritance, about $250, $0, right under our noses. It was buried in shadowy accounts, hidden debts, and fake loans. I couldn't believe it. All this time, I thought I was building a future with my wife, and behind my back she was sleeping with her boss and helping her own husband steal from us. I felt like I'd been punched again and again. My wife, the woman I trusted, was a liar, and her best friend was just as bad. The betrayal was layered and it cut deep. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I spent hours staring at the ceiling, trying to process what I'd uncovered. I realized I had to confront her, but I also knew I needed a plan. This wasn't just about catching her cheating. It was about stopping the damage and figuring out what the hell I was going to do next. I never thought I'd be in this position, caught between a wife I loved and a betrayal that went far beyond what I imagined. And honestly, I was furious, heartbroken, and lost all at once. The confrontation came sooner than I expected. I couldn't hold it in anymore, not after what I'd found. I waited until she came home from work, trying to keep my hands from trembling as I watched her walk through the door, acting like everything was normal. That was the worst part, her casual attitude, the way she greeted me like she hadn't been lying and sneaking around for months. It made me want to scream, but I didn't. I took a deep breath, clenched my fists, and just laid it out. "Lisa," I said, voice cold and steady, "I know everything about you and about the affair. And I know about Mike siphoning off our inheritance. The $250, $0 you helped him steal." Her face froze for a second, then she blinked, trying to act surprised. "What are you talking about? You're overreacting. You're just jealous, probably. Don't lie," I cut her off, voice rising. "I saw the texts. I found the bank statements, all of it. You've been lying to me, cheating on me, and helping husband steal from us. How could you do this?" She scoffed, crossing her arms. You don't know what you're talking about, is just a friend. And Mike, he's just going through a rough patch. You don't understand how complicated life is, okay? You're making a big deal out of nothing. That's when I saw the bitchy edge in her voice, the way she was trying to brush everything off like it was nothing. It made my blood boil. I wasn't some naive fool. I knew she was lying, and I knew she'd been lying for a long time. I told her I wanted the truth, that I deserved honesty, and if she didn't come clean, then we had nothing left. Her eyes narrowed. Fine, you want the truth. I've been stressed, okay? Work, been tough, and has been a good friend. It didn't mean anything. It was just sex, for God's sake. You're overreacting. You always blow things out of proportion. I couldn't believe her. Her tone was dismissive, like she was trying to minimize everything, like I was some kind of crazy person for being hurt. That's when I realized how much she'd been lying, not just about the affair, but about everything. Her excuses, her denial, her manipulative tone, it was all part of her game. She thought she could just brush this off, pretend it was nothing, like she was untouchable. But I wasn't going to let her get away with it. The emotional impact hit me hard. I felt like I'd been punched again, but this time in the chest. My stomach churned and I felt sick. I was angry, yes, but also deeply hurt. The woman I loved, the woman I trusted, had been lying to my face for months. Not just about the affair, but about the money, about everything. I started questioning everything, our marriage, my own judgment, whether I ever really knew her at all. I wanted to scream, to break something, but I held it together. Instead, I told her she needed to leave that night. I told her I needed space to think, to process how I was feeling. I didn't want her around me anymore. She argued, of course, tried to guilt-trip me, said I was overreacting, that I was being unfair. But I didn't care. I knew I had to take control, to figure out what was best for me now. That night I sat alone in our living room, staring at the wall, replaying everything she'd said and done. I felt numb, exhausted, and furious. How could she do this? How could she lie so effortlessly? I kept thinking about the money, the stolen inheritance, the lies, the betrayal. It wasn't just about her cheating. It was about everything that had been hidden from me, all the secrets I'd never suspected. I realized I'd been a fool for trusting her so blindly, and now I had to face the consequences of her actions, no matter how much it hurt. Over the next few days, I couldn't sleep. My mind kept spinning with thoughts about everything she'd done and what it meant for us. I started digging even deeper into the financial mess she'd helped cover up. Turns out, husband Mike had been siphoning off money for years, offshore accounts, fake loans, shell companies. I found bank statements, transfer records, and even some emails where he was bragging about how easy it was to hide the cash. I couldn't believe I'd been so blind, trusting Lisa and her friend, not knowing they'd been part of a scam that was draining our future. I also realized that Lisa's stories about her boss were just a cover. She told me was just a friend, but I saw through her lies. Had been more than that. She was the mistress, the confidant, the one she confided in when she was feeling lonely or stressed, and in turn had been using my wife to cover her own tracks. It was a tangled web, and I was caught right in the middle. I knew I had to do something. I couldn't just sit around feeling sorry for myself. I started making plans. I reached out to a lawyer, figuring I needed legal advice about the inheritance, the house, and the affair. I also hired a private investigator to dig into and Mike's financials. I needed proof, something concrete I could show the authorities or at least use to protect myself legally. It was all so overwhelming, but I knew I couldn't let this slide. Meanwhile, Lisa kept trying to contact me, calling, texting, begging me to talk. She told me she loved me, that she was sorry, that she'd made a huge mistake. She claimed it was just sex, that she didn't mean for it to ruin everything. But I wasn't buying it. How could I? She'd lied to me for months, betrayed our vows, helped cover up thefts that could ruin us financially. I felt betrayed on every level, emotionally, financially, morally. One night, I sat her down and told her I wasn't going to forgive her easily. I said I needed time to think, that I was considering divorce, especially after what I'd uncovered. She got angry then, calling me an idiot, saying I was overreacting, that I was ruining everything. She even accused me of not trusting her, of being paranoid, but I knew better. I knew this wasn't just about suspicion. I had proof, and I couldn't ignore it anymore. The emotional toll was immense. I felt like I was spiraling into a dark place, questioning everything I believed about our marriage and myself. Was I blind? How could the woman I loved so much do this to me? And why? The money part stung the most, seeing how she and her husband had been stealing from us, hiding debts and lying about their financial situation. It was like I'd been robbed twice, once emotionally, once financially. I decided I had to take control. I couldn't fix what was broken, but I could at least protect myself from further damage. I put the house in a legal freeze, started gathering evidence, and prepared myself for the worst. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but I was determined to get through it. I didn't want to be the guy who got played and let it all slide. I owed it to myself to fight back, even if it meant losing everything I thought I knew. The more I dug into the financial mess, the more I realized how deep the rabbit hole went. Husband Mike had been siphoning off money for years, probably more than the $250, $0 I initially discovered. I found email exchanges where he was bragging about how cleverly he'd hidden the cash, using offshore accounts and fake loans. It made me sick to think I'd been living next to a thief, and my wife had been helping him all along. That betrayal cut even deeper than her affair. I started working closely with my lawyer, a sharp woman named Jessica. She explained that our joint inheritance had been compromised, and the legal chaos was only beginning. Our house, the savings we'd built, even our retirement accounts, everything was potentially at risk. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach repeatedly. All those years I'd worked hard for a future with Lisa, and now it was all hanging in the balance, possibly stolen or lost because of her and lies. Meanwhile, Lisa kept trying to reach me. She'd call late at night, begging for forgiveness, crying, saying she'd do anything to fix this. She insisted she still loved me, that she'd been stupid, that she'd made a terrible mistake. Her words sounded hollow now. I'd heard enough. I told her I needed space, that I was considering divorce, and I didn't want to hear her apologies anymore. I couldn't trust her, not after everything I'd uncovered. And honestly, I was too angry to even look at her without feeling a mix of rage and heartbreak. One day, I decided to set a trap. I hired a private investigator, a guy named Mark, to follow and Mike. I needed concrete proof of their involvement in the financial theft and their ongoing affair. Over the next week, Mark gathered enough evidence, photos of and Mike meeting secretly, bank transfers, offshore account details. It was a gut punch to see the pictures of sneaking out of Mike's house, her hand in his pocket, looking guilty as hell. It confirmed what I already suspected, was not just a friend to Lisa, but her lover, and she was involved in the financial scam. That night, I sat down with Lisa again. I laid out everything I had found. I told her I had proof she'd been lying to my face, that I knew she'd been cheating and helping cover up a crime. Her reaction was a mix of anger and denial. She yelled, called me paranoid, said I was overreacting, and accused me of destroying our marriage for no reason. She insisted she'd only been trying to cope with her stressful job, that was just a supportive friend, that she'd never meant to hurt me, but I wasn't buying it anymore. Her excuses sounded hollow. I saw through her manipulative tone, the way she tried to turn the tables on me. I told her she needed to leave for good, that I wasn't going to tolerate her lies and betrayal anymore. She stormed out, calling me cruel, saying I was throwing away everything we had. I just sat there, exhausted and numb, realizing that my world was collapsing around me. The emotional toll was almost too much to bear. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and furious. I kept questioning how I'd missed all the signs, how I'd been so blind to her lies. The money stolen, the affair, the lies, all of it was like a punch to the gut. I kept thinking about the future I'd imagined with her, and how it was now slipping through my fingers. I knew I had to act fast, to protect what was left and to start figuring out my next move. I couldn't let her ruin me completely, emotionally, financially, or otherwise, and I was going to go down without a fight. After everything I uncovered, I knew my next steps had to be calculated. The legal chaos was mounting, and I had to protect what little remained of my finances and dignity. I met with Jessica, my lawyer, several times to go over the evidence, the bank statements, the offshore accounts, and the proof of Mike's involvement. We drafted a plan to freeze our assets, file for divorce, and perhaps most importantly, pursue criminal charges against Mike for theft. It was a lot to process, but I felt a strange sense of clarity, like I was finally taking control of the situation instead of just reacting to it. Meanwhile, Lisa's attempts to contact me grew more desperate. She sent texts, begged in phone calls, even showed up at my office once, looking like she'd been crying. She told me she'd do anything to fix things, that she was sorry, that she loved me. But every word felt hollow now. I was tired of her lies, tired of her excuses. I knew she was trying to manipulate me into forgiveness, but I couldn't trust her anymore. Every time I looked at her, I saw a woman I no longer recognized, one who had betrayed me on every level. One night, I decided I needed to confront her directly about her feelings, about why she'd done this. I asked her why she'd betrayed everything we'd built. Her answer was infuriating. She said she was stressed, that her job was overwhelming, that she'd felt trapped and lonely. She claimed she never meant for it to go this far. She insisted it was just sex, that she'd never truly loved, that she'd been stupid and weak. She begged me to forgive her, to give her another chance. I looked at her with cold eyes. I told her that her excuses didn't matter anymore, that her actions had shattered any trust I had left. I explained that I was done, that I couldn't keep living in a lie, and that I was going to leave her. I told her she needed to pack her things and get out of the house. She started crying, screaming, calling me a bastard, saying I was ruining everything. But I couldn't care less. I knew I had to put an end to this chapter of my life. The day she moved out was one of the hardest days I've ever experienced. I watched her pack her bags, saw the tears in her eyes, and felt a strange mixture of relief and sadness. I realized I was losing a woman I once loved, but also gaining my life back. I started to focus on rebuilding, on getting my finances in order, on figuring out what I wanted from this point forward. I knew I'd need a fresh start, free from her lies and betrayal. In the aftermath, I learned some hard truths. Trust is fragile, and once broken, it's almost impossible to repair. I also learned that money can be a tool of betrayal, how greed and deception can undermine everything you thought was secure. The betrayal cut deep, but I refused to let it define me. I started seeing a therapist to deal with the emotional fallout, and I began working on my own recovery. I still feel the sting of it all, but I also feel stronger, knowing I survived this chaos and came out the other side. My biggest lesson: never ignore the signs, and never let anyone steal your future, especially not through lies and betrayal. Now, looking back, I realize that I learned more about myself than I ever thought I would. The betrayal was brutal, no doubt about it. It tore apart the life I thought I was building, and it left me with a lot of questions about trust, loyalty, and what really matters. But in the end, I also learned that resilience is real. I thought I was broken for a while, but I found ways to pick up the pieces, to rebuild my sense of self, and to start over. One of the biggest lessons I took away is that money, love, and trust are intertwined in ways you don't always see until it's almost too late. The way Mike managed to hide their greed behind smiling faces and fake friendships was a wake-up call. It made me realize that you can't just assume people are honest because they seem nice or because they're close to you. Sometimes, the people you trust the most are the ones who betray you the hardest. And when that happens, you have to decide whether to let it destroy you or to learn from it and move forward. I also learned that confronting the truth is the hardest step, but the most necessary. Ignoring or avoiding it only makes things worse. Facing it head-on, no matter how painful, gives you the power to take control. That's what I did. I gathered evidence, sought legal help, and made the tough decision to walk away from a marriage that had become a lie. It wasn't easy, but I knew I had to do it for myself. And finally, I've come to accept that healing takes time. I still have bad days, moments when the pain hits hard, when I wonder if I'll ever fully trust again. But I also know that I'm stronger than I thought. I'm rebuilding my life, piece by piece, and I refuse to let this define me. If anything, it's made me more cautious, more aware, and more determined to find happiness on my own terms. To anyone out there going through something similar, I'd say this. Don't ignore the signs, but don't let them consume you either. Take control of your story. Seek help if you need it. And remember, even in the darkest moments, there's a chance to start over. Trust is fragile, but resilience is stronger. The betrayal hurts, but it doesn't have to break you completely. Keep fighting because your future is still yours to shape.